A deeper agony. You've been told that the sharpest sting a man can feel is the moment he discovers he's been betrayed. You think that the sudden, cold realization of the truth is where the suffering begins and ends, but you're wrong. There is a far more profound, more gut wrenching agony that exists in the shadows before the truth ever comes to light. It is a slow burning poison that seeps into your life while you're still smiling, still planning a future, and still believing in a lie. The real agony isn't the discovery, it's the physical and spiritual violation of the present moment. It is the haunting reality of kissing lips that only hours ago were pressed against another man's skin. It is the act of reaching out in the dark to hold a body that no longer belongs to you, a body that has already given its warmth, its energy, and its secrets to a stranger. And you are the only person in the room who doesn't know the locks have been changed. We like to think we are observant, but when it comes to the people we love, we become masters of self-deception. When she pulls away, you don't call it a red flag. You call it a long day at the office. When she becomes cold or distant, you tell yourself it's just the natural routine of a long-term relationship, or perhaps the weight of age and stress. You build a fortress of excuses to protect yourself from a truth that is too heavy to carry. But here is the reality you need to wake up to. While a woman will rarely hand you a written confession, her nature is to reveal the truth through her actions, her shifts in energy, and the subtle breakdown of her habits. She is constantly broadcasting her choices. But if you choose to stay tuned to the wrong frequency, you aren't just a victim. You become the silent accomplice to your own humiliation. You are essentially helping her hide the truth from you by refusing to look at what is right in front of your face. This isn't about being paranoid or living in fear. It's about having the self-respect to see the world as it actually is, not as you wish it to be. Every minute you spend ignoring the gut feeling that something has shifted is a minute you spend losing a piece of your dignity. Most men don't fail because they aren't smart. They fail because they wait for a smoking gun that never comes, ignoring the trail of breadcrumbs that leads straight to the exit. They wait until the emotional coffin is already nailed shut and buried before they admit the relationship died months ago. That ends today. I am going to strip away the excuses and the what ifs. I am revealing the 8 specific, undeniable signs that give away a woman who has just stepped outside of your bond. These are the markers she cannot hide, the psychological and physical slips that happen when her loyalty has moved to another source. If you want to stop being the last person to know the truth about your own life, you need to listen closely, because the final sign I'm going to share is the one she will never be able to cover up, no matter how hard she tries. 1. The cold silence of the body. There is a specific kind of silence that has nothing to do with a lack of conversation. It's a silence that vibrates from the skin. It's a total absence of heat. When you have shared a life and a bed with a woman, you become intimately synchronized with her physical language. You know the exact weight of her hand when she's relaxed, the specific warmth of her breath when she's close, and the way her body naturally gravitates toward yours without a second thought. You know what it feels like when the current is flowing, but you also know the exact bone-chilling moment when that current goes dead. This realization doesn't usually arrive like a thunderclap or a loud argument. It arrives as a whisper. It's the subtle, agonizing shift where the woman who used to melt into your touch now subtly stiffens when you place a hand on her shoulder. It's the way she instinctively turns her cheek just a fraction of an inch when you lean in for a kiss, turning a moment of connection into a mechanical obligation. Most men make the mistake of listening to her words instead of her energy. She will tell you she's just tired or that she's had a stressful day, but your gut knows the difference between the heaviness of exhaustion and the heaviness of indifference. Exhaustion seeks comfort. It reaches for a partner to find rest. Indifference, however, creates a wall. It is the physical manifestation of a mind that is already elsewhere. The brutal truth that most men are too afraid to face is that a woman who has been physically and emotionally fulfilled by someone else does not return to you hungry for your affection. She returns satisfied. And in that state of satisfaction, there is simply no biological or emotional room left for you. She isn't seeking your touch because her cup has already been filled by another source. Imagine trying to light a fire with wood that is already burned to ash. No matter how many matches you strike or how hard you plead, the heat will not return because the fuel is gone. The trap here is the urge to beg for that warmth or to push harder for intimacy, thinking your effort can reignite the spark. But you cannot negotiate desire, and you certainly cannot force a body to respond when its loyalty has shifted. When you sense this cold silence, the only move that preserves your dignity is to stop chasing. You must pull back completely and observe. If the distance between you doesn't naturally shrink when you stop pursuing her, it's not because she's busy or going through a phase. It is because the fire hasn't died out of old age. It has simply moved to a different house. Recognizing this shift isn't about being cynical. It's about being honest enough with yourself to see when you are being excluded from the very intimacy you helped build. 2. The erasing ritual. When a woman crosses the threshold of your home after being intimate with someone else, she doesn't walk in smelling like betrayal. She walks in smelling like a fresh start. This is what I call the erasing ritual, and it is one of the most calculated shifts in her behavior. It's the sudden, urgent need to scrub away the evidence of the last few hours before you have a chance to register them. You'll notice a shower that lasts twice as long as usual, or the strange timing of her hygiene, rushing to the bathroom the second she walks through the door instead of greeting you. She might be wearing a new perfume that wasn't there when she left, or she might have swapped her clothes for something entirely different under the guise of wanting to get comfortable. On the surface, she's just practicing self-care, but beneath the surface, she is scrubbing her conscience and her skin. She knows, perhaps even unconsciously, that a body holds on to stories. Skin retains scents, hair carries traces, and clothes remember the contact of another person. The erasing ritual is her attempt to hit the reset button on her physical reality so that when she finally sits across from you, there are no lingering clues for your senses to pick up. Most men gaslight themselves during this phase. They tell themselves, she just likes to stay clean, or she's just being more feminine lately. They take it as a compliment to her character rather than a warning sign of her deception. But effective psychology isn't about looking at a single act. It's about noticing the shift in the pattern. If her rhythm used to be relaxed and she suddenly treats her laundry like a classified crime scene or guards her privacy in the bathroom like a fortress, she is hiding a narrative that she doesn't want you to read. This ritual is an admission of guilt disguised as a routine. The irony is that the more she tries to erase the traces of the other man, the louder her actions actually scream the truth. When she covers herself in lavender and soap to hide the scent of another, she is counting on your willingness to stay blind. She expects you to accept the freshness at face value. Your job is to stop looking at the soap and start looking at the timing. Connect the dots between her unexplained absences and her immediate need to cleanse herself afterward. If the ritual becomes a consistent sequel to her time away from you, you aren't looking at personal hygiene. You are looking at a cover-up. Once you see the ritual for what it is, the fresh start she presents loses its power, and you can finally see the deception hiding in plain sight. 3. The weaponized blame game guilt is one of the heaviest emotional burdens a human being can carry, and most people are simply not built to hold it for long. When a woman has betrayed the bond, that guilt begins to eat away at her self-image. To survive her own conscience, she has to find a way to stop feeling like the villain in her own story. And the easiest way to do that is to turn you into the antagonist. This is where the weaponized blame game begins. Suddenly, the atmosphere in your home shifts from peace to a minefield. You find yourself being attacked for things that never mattered before. You breathe too loudly, you're smothering her, you didn't load the dishwasher the right way, or you're suddenly too boring or too controlling. These aren't genuine grievances. They are tactical strikes designed to create conflict. By picking these fights, she creates a mental environment where the relationship feels broken, miserable, and suffocating. This is a calculated psychological exit strategy. If she can provoke you enough to make you snap, or if she can convince herself that you are a terrible partner, then her betrayal is no longer a mistake. It becomes a justified escape from an unhappy situation. The trap that most men fall into is trying to play defense. You start explaining yourself, you try to be more helpful, you apologize for things you didn't even do, and you try to out logic her irritation. You think if you just prove you're a good man, she'll stop being angry. But you cannot use logic to defeat a move that is rooted in guilt. The more you defend yourself, the more ammunition you give her to keep the bad guy narrative alive. You are essentially helping her build the wall that separates you. To break this cycle, you have to stop playing the role she's written for you. When she snaps at you with that unjustified venom, do not rise to the bait. Do not argue, do not yell, and certainly do not beg for her approval. Instead, you claim the emotional high ground. Look her directly in the eyes with total composure and say, "You don't need to fight me to justify the choices you've already made." This single sentence strips away her shield. By refusing to participate in the fake argument, you force the weight of the guilt back onto her shoulders. You are letting her know that you see the game, you aren't fooled by the projection, and you won't be the scapegoat for her choices. This is how you reclaim your dignity and force the truth into the light. 4. The imprint of another. A woman can spend hours rehearsing a lie until it sounds like absolute truth. She can polish her excuses, align her timelines, and keep her voice steady, but there is one thing she can never coach: her own nervous system. You have been close to this woman. You know the rhythm of her heartbeat, the way her skin reacts to your touch, and the natural hum of her presence. Because of this deep familiarity, your intuition is far more powerful than your conscious mind. You will feel a shift in her energy long before you find a single piece of proof. Sometimes it manifests as an unnerving, rigid tension, as if her body is a locked room you no longer have the key to. Other times, it's a strange, detached relaxation, a coldness that feels like she's already moved on to a different life. Most men feel this gut punch of intuition and immediately try to suppress it. They tell themselves they are being insecure or paranoid because they are terrified of what the truth actually means. But ignoring your senses isn't an act of trust, it's an act of cowardice. It's choosing to stay blind because the light of the truth is too painful to bear. The brutal reality is that a body that has just been with another man carries a psychological and physical imprint. It is a subtle but undeniable shift in responsiveness. When you reach for her, the melting sensation is gone. Intimacy starts to feel like a chore she is checking off a list, a mechanical performance designed to keep you from asking questions. You might notice she is suddenly overperforming in bed to overcompensate for her guilt, or she might be completely absent, staring through you as if you aren't even there. The biggest mistake you can make here is trying to win her back through increased effort. Men often respond to this distance by being more affectionate, buying gifts, or trying harder to please her physically. This never works. You cannot win back desire by rewarding the person who is withdrawing it. In fact, by trying harder, you only show her that you are willing to settle for the crumbs of her attention. True strength is having the courage to acknowledge when the connection has been severed. When the imprint of someone else is there, the most powerful thing you can do is pull back your own energy. You don't regain your power by chasing a ghost. You regain it by recognizing the reality of the situation and refusing to be a participant in a hollow performance. 5. The theater of excessive affection. Many men believe that betrayal always carries a cold, sharp edge, that a woman who has been unfaithful will naturally pull away and become a ghost in her own home. But that isn't always the case. Sometimes betrayal doesn't look like ice, it looks like fire. It arrives at your door wrapped in a sudden, overwhelming, and uncharacteristic wave of sweetness that feels almost too good to be true. This is what I call the theater of excessive affection, and it is perhaps the most cruel trick in the book because it targets your deepest sense of hope. You may have felt her drifting for weeks, sensed a growing gap between you, and suddenly she's back. She's holding your hand tighter than usual, whispering, "I love you," with eyes that seem strangely watery or intense, and acting more domestic and attentive than she has in years. In your heart, you want to believe this is a breakthrough, that she's finally realized your worth and is coming back to you. But the reality is much darker. This sudden explosion of warmth isn't an act of love for you, it is a desperate internal apology for herself. When a person violates their own moral code, the weight of that self disgust can be suffocating. To cope with the shame of what she has done, she begins to perform the role of the perfect partner to prove to herself that she is still a good person. This affection is a tool she uses to quiet the screaming voice of her own conscience. She is essentially using you as a prop in a play designed to convince her that she hasn't actually destroyed the bond. You'll notice that this affection feels different. It's high energy, almost frantic, and feels strangely rehearsed. It lacks the steady, calm consistency of a secure connection. To pass the test of your own intuition, you have to look at the patterns. Does this warmth stay consistent over time, or does it only arrive in frantic waves immediately following her unexplained absences or girls' nights? If her touch feels like an overcorrection, she isn't reaching out to connect with you. She is reaching out to erase the memory of someone else. Real love doesn't require a theatrical performance or a sudden reset button. If the affection feels like a bribe, it's because it is. She is trying to buy your silence and her own peace of mind with a version of intimacy that is hollow at the core. 6. Physical presence, emotional absence. There is a profound and massive difference between having a woman's body beside you and having her soul with you. This is the stage of betrayal where the cut goes the deepest because it happens in the moments that are supposed to be your most private and sacred. You may find yourself lying in bed with her, the lights are off, and the world is quiet. Physically, everything seems normal. She might be going through the motions of intimacy. She might even be saying the right things. But the energy in the room is completely vacant. You can feel a literal void between your skin and hers. This is the hallmark of emotional absence. While she is physically present, her mind is miles away, replaying a different memory or perhaps fantasizing about a different future that doesn't involve you. You are touching a person who isn't actually there. It is a haunting, hollow experience that leaves you feeling more alone than if you were actually by yourself. Most men react to this ghostly presence by trying to fill the void with their own effort. You think that if you are just more romantic, more patient, or more physically impressive, you can pull her back into the room. You tell yourself that she's just distracted by work or in her own head. But you cannot fill a hole that someone else is digging. Every ounce of extra effort you pour into a woman who has checked out emotionally is an act of slow motion humiliation. You are essentially begging for the attention of a shadow. The solution here isn't to chase her spirit, it's to stop being a participant in the lie. You have to have the courage to pause, pull back your own energy, and observe the reality of the silence. If you feel a void where her spirit used to be, recognize that it isn't your job to bridge that gap alone. Being physically intimate with someone who is emotionally absent is a betrayal of your own self respect. Stop trying to revive a bond that has already been buried in her mind. Once you stop the frantic chasing, you will see the situation for what it truly is: a house where the lights are on, but the home has been abandoned. Recognizing this reality is the first step toward reclaiming your power and refusing to settle for a seat at a table where the host has already left.